Hey, it's Yoshimitsu from the Disney Infinity subreddit and DisneyInfinityCodes.com, and in this video I'm going to show you some advanced techniques for combat and movement in Disney Infinity 3.0. Prior to coming to Disney Infinity, I was a big player of Street Fighter and lots of other fighting games, so I'm going to be borrowing heavily from the terminology used in that game, and as a result of that, the first thing I want to do is lay down what some of that terminology actually is. So, just for a quick demonstration, every attack you use in the game, and in pretty much any game, has three phases: a startup, an active, and a recovery phase. When I talk about the three attack phases, what I'm talking about are the components of the character's animation when they perform the attack. So, as you might expect, the startup phase refers to the startup animation of the attack. It's everything from when you press the button to when the character swings their weapon or shoots their gun, and the time it takes for that weapon to hit the opponent. So as you can see in the animation I'm showing here, Kylo Ren swings his lightsaber, and I've tried to encapsulate pretty much everything from the moment the swing starts to right before it hits the Rhino Guard. The next phase is the active phase, and it's a little bit difficult to nail down. In games like Street Fighter, the active phase usually isn't very long, usually 2 or 3 frames. It'll be longer depending on what attack it is, of course, but for a standard normal attack, the active phase is very, very short. The dead giveaway here is that we transition from there being no hit animation to there being a hit animation. So now the Rhino Guard has this explosion, or this hit animation, this hit effect on him, and that is your cue that he's in the active phase. So the difference between the startup and the active phase is that in the active phase your opponent can actually be hit by the attack, whereas in the startup phase you can't hit the opponent. So the active phase is basically the amount of time that the attack is capable of hitting the opponent. The recovery phase is the last part of the attack, and it encapsulates the amount of time after you hit and until your character stops doing whatever they're doing. So you'll see, after he hits, Kylo Ren does a little sword spin, and it takes him a second to get back to the standing neutral position. And from this position, you can do another attack, you can move, you can do anything. So you have to wait until the recovery animation completely finishes to do your next attack, except in the case of a cancel. So the cancel is the next thing we'll talk about. So your first thought when I said you have to wait for him to do his little sword spin before you can do anything might be, what? No, you don't. I can just sit here and beat on him all day, and I don't have to wait for him to finish the sword spin. And that's true, but what you're actually doing there is you're canceling without realizing it. So when I talk about a cancel, what am I talking about? I'm talking about that little animation he does there. You're just canceling it. You're making him stop doing it. If I just use my normal attack and I hold right, for me it's D, for you it might be a joystick, I have to wait for him to do that before he'll start moving to the right. So I'm just using the attack and holding right. Whereas I don't have to wait that long if I just keep mashing the button. Disney Infinity is actually very mash friendly. For a lot of attacks and a lot of characters, you can just sit here, like I'm just mashing away on left button right now, and it's fine. You'll get that nice little attack sequence. It's handy, it's effective, but what you can do is, with the awareness of what you can actually cancel, you can do some interesting sequences that you otherwise might not do if you're just mashing the button. So in Disney Infinity you can cancel both the startup and the recovery animations of an attack. The recovery is easier to do because the timing is just much more lenient. Like if I attack this guy and then just hold block, the recovery of my attack will immediately cancel in the block. Like you don't have to think about it, you don't have to time it, it'll just happen. Similarly, you can cancel into a dodge like that. And it's pretty easy. You just use the attack button and then immediately press the thing that you want to cancel into. So with the recovery animation, and I think this is true for the startup as well, you can cancel into jump, you can cancel into another attack, and if you cancel this little mash attack sequence here is generally, like in fighting games, it's referred to as a chain. It's also, I mean, more generally, it's a combo, but a combo is just any sequence of uninterrupted attacks. A chain specifically refers to you mash the same button and you get this cancel sequence that you don't really have to think about. Also, you can cancel into a force dash with force characters, and force characters can also cancel into a force pull. The force pull can be cancelled in the air, as well as the force dash, but you can only do one force dash in the air. So unlike my melee sequence where I can just do this all day, once I've used a force dash, I can't do it again. You can also cancel your normal attacks into a launch. This allows you to convert combos into a launch from pretty much any step. You're going to want to make sure that you do the launcher before you get that last hit of the combo, because otherwise you'll be too far away to get hit with it. For characters who have a ranged weapon, you can also cancel into their range. This allows you to do some pretty interesting juggles. Like with most ranged characters, you can just sit here and juggle a single opponent as long as you want. Also, don't forget, like I showed you, you have to wait for him to do that little spin right there before you can move again. So one way you can actually make that faster is block, cancel, immediately move. So being able to cancel out of that normal attack or any of your normal attacks adds a whole lot more movement possibilities. Being able to cancel your attacks into a block or a dash or a dodge is also important for being able to make your attacks safe. Now, what do I mean by safe? See how when I finish my combo sequence on this guy, he goes and lands on the ground, and if he's an AI, I have enough time to run up and keep hitting him? If you're playing against another human opponent, whenever they land on the ground like that, or depending on their talents, when they launch up into the air like that, they can recover with their jump attack, which means you will actually be at a disadvantage. Like after that, Kylo Ren has to sit there and do his little bow. You can move, and that's fine, or you can dodge roll, block. So I mentioned you can also cancel the startup of your attack like this. It may not be obvious what that's useful for, although if you saw a minute ago, I actually just triggered an enemy counter response with it. So I can use my attack sequence, and if I time it right, I've now triggered the enemy counter attack. So I can essentially hedge my bets in a way. If I want to use a normal attack, but I don't know if it's going to hit, any time up until when it hits, I can cancel it into a block and still be safe. And if you use that technique, you're much more likely to get that counterattack trigger, which honestly is pretty difficult to get without that technique. You pretty much have to run up and just try to specifically counter his attack like that. Also, for a character like Hulk, whose attacks start up incredibly slowly, being able to cancel them into a block, super useful. Or he's also got a sort of dash attack, kind of like the Force Dash, that you can cancel them into too. It doesn't start up quite as quickly, unfortunately. But yeah, you can use that to fake out a human opponent, or to provide some safety whenever you're fighting some AI opponents. Canceling the startup of a normal attack is also sometimes known as a kara or a kata cancel, which comes from the Japanese word for empty, because you're not actually loading any attack in there. Now you might be thinking, this is stupid, it sounds like I can just cancel anything into anything, but you can't actually. For example, with your Force Dash, you can't immediately cancel into an attack unless you buy the special move in your corresponding character's skill tree. Similarly, with your special attack, I'm just mashing the special attack button right now. Can't cancel into it. It'd be nice if you could just tap them once and then immediately go special, but you can't do that. So you require some kind of setup like this guy. Now you may be thinking, I can just run up and use it on him though. And it's certainly true. For Kylo Ren, it's actually even effective because you just stun him in place. You got this big AoE attack that you don't really have to worry about. There will be some bosses in the game, and obviously if you're playing against another person, you're gonna have a much harder time just running up and using your super on them. So another fun use for cancels comes with the force dash, and it's one of the main reasons I find it difficult to use any character that doesn't have a force dash. You may have noticed when you just mash force dash like this, there's that little wait period in between where you can't actually do another force dash, but you can't. So essentially what I'm saying there is you can't cancel a force dash into another force dash. But what you can do is you can cancel a force dash into a jump. And as I mentioned earlier, you can do one force dash in the air. So you can force dash, jump, force dash, and get 2 force dashes very quickly. And the neat trick here is, although you can't cancel a force dash into a force dash, you can cancel a jump, force dash, land into a force dash. So if I jump, force dash, and land, I can do another force dash as soon as I land. So you can use this technique to get around so much faster than any character that can't do this. I like to call this fast force dashing because it's fast force dashing. There was a video that was pretty popular around the time that 3.0 originally released, where an Anakin basically kept Darth Maul in the boss fight constantly in the air by just using these force pull cancels off the launch combo. So that's how you do it, basically. You launch into the combo, attack, 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 and cancel into force pull. You can even use your finisher there. It makes controlling a single opponent especially really easy. Anakin's combo is, I'm sure, the easiest, just because you can do all 3 hits and still get the force pull. And even link into a new combo if you drop them, apparently. So obviously the force pull is incredibly powerful, because even a character like Vader with these super slow attacks can now do an infinite combo where you just keep them up in the air until they die. Without the proper skills, it's a little bit more difficult with Kylo Ren, because you'll have to manually jump up and follow. Also, you actually can't use that third attack I just used, or you'll just push them to the ground and you can't actually cancel and do a force pull off of that attack. He does have a skill, which I'm currently invested in, where you can just tap and he'll follow them up like that, and that's pretty handy. I mean, it's a question of whether you want to spend the skill points on that. I would say it's probably worth it just for the ease of not having to do the manual jump follow-up, but I mean, it's possible in the metagame somewhere people would say, since you can do the jump follow-up, why waste the skill points? Luke also has a force pull, but unfortunately he doesn't follow them up. And as far as I can see, he doesn't have a skill that allows you to just tap a button and follow them up. So you pretty much have to do the jump to keep comboing on them in the air like that. Jedi characters who don't have a force pull can't do air infinites like the others can, but you can still do ground infinites.
This fight you have.
You can even use these tricks to do infinites with characters from 2.0 who don't have force attacks. But just remember, like I mentioned earlier, once they land on the ground right there, a human player will be able to recover by using their jump button. So AIs will fall for it, humans won't. When people talk about why a lot of the 1.0 characters aren't very good, it's because they don't have the ability to chain combos like 2.0 or to the incredible extent that 3.0 characters do. So while you can still kind of keep enemies stun locked and not have to worry about them doing anything, it's, for one, a lot less interesting, and two, it's a lot less consistent. There's the little bit of window at the end there where if you're not careful, they'll still be able to do something. So you can actually follow up with the Pixar Ball and keep them stun locked a little bit better.